Marvelous. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It is absolutely wonderful to be here. I'm just going to make a little adjustment in the slides. Is that okay? Because I'm just conscious of time. So let me just make a little change. Just talk amongst yourselves. Marvelous. Okay, do you want to flip me on now? That'd be brilliant. Okay, hopefully that'll work. Hopefully our technology. Yes. Okay, marvelous. It is fantastic to be here at Hollybush. Part of the 50th celebrations, my goodness. And it's just a great joy to share in the Bible studies again and see so many people here. So thank you again, Jim, for the invitation and for the privilege of being here. It is a great, great honor. And hopefully throughout the week, if we haven't met before, I know I see people I know and faces that we are familiar with. But hopefully if we don't know each other, we'll get to know each other over this week. I was very impressed by John running around the building. That was very good. Although, John, if you're going to do that in the future, make sure the song is shorter. The people that were running around after you were struggling, man. They were... I was thinking we need to do CPR here at the front. One or two people. So well done for making it all the way to the end of the song and even jumping at the end as well. Very impressed by that. But there we are. So listen, as you can see from the screen, we're going to be looking this week in our Bible studies at the whole issue of overcoming oil. That's the title of the series we're going to look at, and we're going to break this down a little bit. So if you've got a Bible with you, going to get straight into it and just watching the clock. So I'm conscious people will have to start leaving to pick up kids and all sorts of stuff. So it's Matthew chapter 26, and if you have your Bible with you and you want to follow it, why don't you grab that? Now the screen says that we're going to read from 36 to 56. Just for the sake of time, I'll cut that out a little bit and we will just read to 46. So we'll go from Matthew chapter 26 and we'll do verses 36 to 46. Bit of a symmetry there going on, so that was pretty cool. So if you have a Bible, why don't you grab that, and that will be great. Then I'll explain where we're going. All right then. Here we go. Verse 36, Matthew 26. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and he prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples, found them sleeping, and he said to them, "Could you men not keep watch with me for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to his disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour is near, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." Very powerful and incredible passage of Scripture for us. In a sense, really, Gethsemane is the place where Jesus comes to terms with the fact he's about to die. Now, we know that the end of the story, of course. We know how it all ends and how it all looks. Jesus dies and rises from the dead. But just for a few moments, let's enter into the moment with Jesus, into the actual moment of this garden with him, and understand, or try and understand, what he is processing through at this incredible moment. He is about to drink a cup which will eventually and ultimately save the world. But the cost of drinking that cup to Jesus is absolutely phenomenal. And actually, it's in this garden that I want to hang around for 5 mornings. We're going to stay in the Garden of Gethsemane for 5 mornings because I think that actually within this experience of Jesus, there are some profound ideas to help me and you in our own journey with him, and to help me and you as we are processing maybe some of the challenges or the opportunities that actually lie before us. Some of you will know this, but just in case you don't, Gethsemane literally means this idea, gat shemane, which points to, gat is press and shemen is oil. So Gethsemane, when we translate it into our language, literally means oil press. Or it's become known or synonymous with the idea of olive press. And so what an incredible coincidence. What an incredible collision of moments, that the very place where Jesus is probably put under greatest pressure in his life up to this point, that very place is called oil press. Yeah. Incredible coincidence. Maybe Jesus deliberately chooses that place as the place of prayer and where the place that he goes. But this place where we get some insight into the prayers of Jesus, some insight into this dramatic moment, is called in the language of Jesus the oil press, or synonymously the olive press. And although Jesus would suffer profoundly on the cross physically, Gethsemane represents, probably up to this moment in his life, his greatest psychological, his greatest spiritual, and his greatest emotional challenge. When we look at the garden, we see Jesus coming under pressure in all of these areas. He comes under pressure physically. He comes under pressure spiritually. He comes under pressure psychologically. And he comes under pressure emotionally. This is a mammoth moment for Jesus. And sometimes because it's Jesus, we skip over the fact that as a man, he is going through profound suffering. And we sort of think, well, he's the Son of God. He just carried it. He just went with it. He just made it happen. But actually, he is going through profound levels of suffering and profound levels of pressing in this moment, to the point where Dr. Luke describes this moment in this way. He says his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. And only Dr. Luke gives us this detail, that an angel strengthened him. It's amazing that this moment is so important that all four gospel writers give it huge wordage. All four gospel writers talk about it in slightly different details. But this garden experience, this oil press moment for Jesus, is so mammoth, so important, and so insightful that all of the gospel writers want us to see this. It's Matthew and Mark who tell us that when Jesus enters a garden, he uses these words, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." And it's really easy for us, really easy as Christians, because we know what happens next. Because we know Jesus dies and Jesus rises from the dead and Jesus ascends to heaven, it's really easy to miss the power of this moment. Jesus is enduring one of his most profoundly difficult moments in life up to this point. And even though he's God, he is not immune from the physical, the psychological, the emotional, and the spiritual suffering that he's actually going through here. None of this is pretend. None of this is fake. It's not just for effect. It's not just for sermon illustrations 2,000 years later. What Jesus is experiencing is real. Every single bit of it. And therefore, as we look into the life of Jesus, we can see something of the power of this to help us in our own journey. A few years ago, I went to Israel. Many of you have been to Israel. Magnificent experience. If you've never been, it is absolutely worth putting it on your bucket list and going. Fantastic, fantastic experience. And while I was there, this is one of my pictures, I saw a first century olive press, the sort of olive press that a local village might have, or even a couple of houses working together might have. And you can see maybe some of the detail. Let me put the next picture up for you. Hopefully you can see some of this. If not, I'll try and help you with it. So you've got here, if my little counter will work, there, that's where the olives are put, in that basket there. Okay? So they're put in there. You've got a big wooden sort of pole or lever across here, and then they would weight the lever here, and the idea was to press the olives slowly. The slower the press, the better the oil. And in fact, often they would press and then repress the olives. So that the point was not to brutally crush the olive. The point was to slowly press it, because in slowly pressing the olive, we get the best oil ultimately. And so that's what's happening here. And so the oil would run out of this hole here and into a little vat in the ground here, where they would leave it, and it would separate out. All the nasty bits would separate from the oil, and they would just drain that off eventually. Our guide, who was showing us this and explaining this to us, said something profound. He said, when you're pressing the olive, it's really important you don't crush the seed. Because crushing the seed releases bitterness into the oil. What a thought. That was 2012, and that thought hit me like a moment of revelation. And I grabbed that, and as I stood there in that garden, my mind immediately went to another garden. This garden that we're talking about today. And here we have a profound moment of pressing. There's no other way to describe Gethsemane. Jesus is being pressed. He's being squeezed. He's being pushed to the very edge of his ability to endure. But the Father who is pressing him isn't after his seed. No. The Father is after his oil. You see, when the devil comes against us, the enemy of our soul comes against us, what he's after is your seed. If he can get your seed, he's got you. If he can crush the life of God inside you, if he can destroy what God has put within you, then actually he's got you. June gave her testimony about working through fear and anxiety. You see, in moments like that, the enemy wants your seed. He wants you to take your eyes off the Lord. He wants you to worry and be anxious. He wants you to think that somehow, because you're suffering, God has abandoned you. And he's left you. If he can get us to there, he's stolen something from us. Yes, yes. He's got something from us that actually the Lord doesn't want him to have. And we know the difference between a pressing moment and a crushing moment. Yeah. Come on. Pressing is about getting oil. Crushing is about getting your seed. And when we enter into a serious relationship with Jesus, there will be moments where it'll feel like we're being crushed. Everything's against us, and we're having to fight very, very hard to hold on to what God has given us. Amen? Have you been there? But then there are other moments where we're absolutely in the center of the will of God. We're doing everything Jesus told us to do. And yet we're being pressed. We're being pressed. And today we don't talk about pressing so much. It's not a popular idea that the Lord who's called us would allow us to be pressed. But sometimes he leads us to a place of pressing, not to destroy us, but to draw something out of us that's greater than the moment we're in. Oil only comes from pressing. I knew I wouldn't get a lot of amens for that one. It's okay. Ladies and gentlemen, seriously now, listen to me carefully. Some things only come out of pressing. Some things only come because actually what we believe comes under pressure. Now, I'm not advocating a negative faith issue here. I'm not saying we've all got to go and suffer. I'm saying we all know the experience that even though we're in the center of the will of God and we're doing everything the Lord's told us to do, yet we come under pressure. Yes. Come on. Now, if you've managed to avoid that pressure all your life, I'd love to hear from you, because I need to know how to do that. Ironically, all of us have come under that pressure, but it is how we react to that pressure that's going to determine whether it gets our seed or it gets our oil. Yes, come on, glory. And actually at the heart of Gethsemane, there's a big question. Oil or seed? Now it's interesting, if you read the 4 versions of the gospel writers closely, you'll notice there's not one single mention of the devil. It's very striking. But yet, the sense is darkness is hovering all around. You get the sense that actually this is a moment where literally the destiny of humanity is in the balance. That there's a sense in which we know that really Jesus is going to drink the cup, but of course, if he chooses not to drink the cup, humanity is lost.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
So there's this moment of tension. There's this moment of paradox. There's this moment where it seems darkness is at work trying to get the seed, but the Father is at work trying to get oil.
Hallelujah. Yes.
My goodness.
Come on.
Now all of us would rather avoid the press. If you're human, that's normal. That's okay. I don't like pain. I don't like discomfort. I don't like being put under pressure. I would rather be able to learn everything and do everything without any measure of discomfort whatsoever. But I'm a big boy. And I've grown out of that nonsense. Ladies and gentlemen, seriously, we've got to grow out of that nonsense. We've got to grow out of this idea that somehow we will become the very best we are in Jesus without a bit of pressing.
Come on, that's right.
You glad you invited me back or not? Should I go now? There's still time. I can go. There are other great preachers in this room. Do you understand? We want to get to the glory of the best oil without ever having to endure a pressing.
That's right. Come on.
And I'm really sorry. I've checked it from cover to cover. There's no shortcut. There's no bargain basement in the book. There's no small print that says if you take a right instead of a left, you'll never have to go through this. Actually, every great man, every great woman that we would say have become great, that we would hold up as models of great faith, every one without exception were pressed. And we celebrate the oil that came out of Jesus today because ultimately Jesus saved the world. And we're here today because oil came out of Jesus, not his seed. His seed wasn't stolen. His oil came out. And because of that, me and you got to worship Jesus today in Hollybush. And that's an amazing idea to celebrate with Jesus. But when it comes down to me on a Monday morning, hold it a minute. Hold it. When it comes down to the fact that I'm in a job I hate, hold it a minute. Hold it now. When actually I haven't got as much money in the bank as I think I should have, hold it. When the doctors tell me I'll die in 2 years if I don't get an operation, hold it now. Hold it. All right, did you understand? Me and you know this. Deep down you know it. Deep down, I'm not telling anybody in this room something you don't already know. But what I want to encourage you with is actually there is an example here in this oil press that can inspire us and encourage us as we go forward in his name. That actually Jesus in Gethsemane was not just the means to getting to the cross, but Jesus in Gethsemane is a lesson, a message, a hope, an encouragement to every single human who follows after Jesus, who finds themselves in the oil press. And they haven't done anything bad to get there. They just followed Jesus and they ended up here. I just followed him. And I've ended up here. But when you end up here, it's what we do here will determine there. Amen? Now I know I'm talking to people who know this better than I do. But over the next number of mornings we're going to look this morning at the oil of submission. We'll come to that in just a minute. Then out of Gethsemane, we're going to look at the oil of strength that flowed out of Jesus. These are aspects of oil that come out of Jesus. Then on Wednesday, we'll look at the oil of steadfastness. Then on Thursday, we'll look at the oil of surrender. And then on Friday, if we make it that far, if you have endured the press and my sermons, then we will look at the oil of success. One of the things we are prone to do as humans is ignore process. We love the idea of beginning. We love the idea of the glory at the end. It's that stinky bit in the middle we don't like so much. And yet it's the stinky bit in the middle that God invests huge energy into. Because it's the stinky bit in the middle that's going to determine a lot. And actually, as we go forward, this is one of those bits in the middle for Jesus, the oil of submission. Let me show you something in the context as we just look at this really, really quickly. The words of Jesus in Gethsemane are profound. And Matthew gives us some beautiful detail on this. So Matthew tells us that Jesus prays, and he says this in Matthew 26:39, the passage we read, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me." Okay? And we know that he prays 2 more times. Mark puts it this way. He says in Mark 14, Jesus says, "Abba, Father, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me." So Jesus is reacting like every human would react. I've been offered a really stinky cup, and I would rather not drink it. Do you know, if a cup's been offered to you and you don't want to drink it, it doesn't make you bad, it just makes you human. It's normal. It's normal not to want to drink a stinky cup. Come on now. That's okay. Relax. You're not bad, you're human. And here's Jesus saying, "Father, is there any chance that you can take this cup away from me?" It's a profound moment. It's a paradoxical moment. It's a moment of profound theological tension. How can God in flesh, who's become fully human, how can he be asking this question? Surely he should just drink the cup. But he's asking that the Father take the cup away. Look at the third little reference, Luke 22. So I'm trying to give you bits from all of the Gospels. Luke says that Jesus says this, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me." Essentially, Gethsemane is a story of a son and a father. And it's remarkable that the first recorded words of Jesus on the cross, the first recorded word of Jesus on the cross is Father. First saying of the 7 sayings recorded in Luke's Gospel is, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." Now, here's a profound moment. Jesus, when he's on the cross, he's looking up to the Father. Jesus, in his moment of greatest pressure, is now looking up to the Father. And every time he prays, he specifically and intimately refers to his Father in this way. It's not just he's looking up to the sky and saying, "God, help me." He's looking up to his Father. There is a tenderness here because he's appealing to the Father. He's asking the Father to help his Son. There's something deeply, deeply tender and intimate about this moment. Matthew tells us then that Jesus prays a second prayer. And the prayer goes like this, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." And then Matthew tells us, as the other gospel writers do, that he goes and prays a third prayer. But we're not given the detail of that, but we assume it's something similar here. Now, all of that's amazing. So 3 prayers of Jesus, all we assume, if we think the third one carries the pattern of 1 and 2, all of them looking up to the Father and specifically crying out to the Father for his help. And yet, Gethsemane awkwardly tells us this profound fact, that in response to these prayers, there is silence. It's an easy detail to miss. As we rush to the moment of victory, it's easy to miss that Jesus prays 3 profoundly intimate prayers, and yet the Father he prays to does not answer. Wow. Interesting, isn't it? Now this is the Father who spoke at his baptism. "You're my Son. I love you. I'm well pleased with you." This is the Father who spoke at his transfiguration. "This is my Son, whom I love. Listen to him."
This is the Father who spoke in John's Gospel after Jesus entered into Jerusalem. And so we have records of the Father speaking to the Son. And each time there's an interesting moment of power here. He speaks at his baptism, a big moment. He speaks at his transfiguration, a big moment. He speaks to Jesus after he enters Jerusalem in John, a big moment. This is a big moment. Silence. Nothing. 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 Father. 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 What a moment. And here's the challenge that I want to bring to us this morning. What do we do when the Father is? I know that's never happened to anybody here. So let's talk theoretically. What do you do when you pray? When you're in the center of God's way? You're not being bad. There's nothing nasty going on in your world. There's no unrighteousness. You're not on the run. You're being a good person. You're following Jesus and you're in the center of the will of God. But there's a pressing going on and you pray and you expect an answer and you expect a certain type of answer and you expect a certain type of answer at a certain time. And here's my theory. If silence happened to Jesus, it might happen to you. It might happen to me. It might not. So let me come clean. There have been moments where I have cried to the Father and there has been silence. Now here's what I mean by silence. He hasn't answered when I want. He hasn't answered how I wanted. So as far as I'm concerned, that's silence. What do we do when the Father is silent? It's 1:15. Do you need to put a sign up? Sign desk people, do you want to put your sign up? I've been told to wait at 1:15. Here it is. What do you do when the sound desk is silent? Come on now. Parents, I'm really sorry. You have to go and get your kids. Well, I'm not sorry you have to go and get your kids. That's important. But if you wanted to hear the rest of this, I'm sorry you have to go. Parents, can you go now if you need to go? Nobody's moving? Okay, let's go back to the Father, not speaking to us. Marvelous. All right then. Could have got a commercial break in there as well. All right, here we go. What do we do when the Father is silent? Well, here's some things that sometimes we do. And we need to watch, need to be careful of. First of all, fear sometimes makes us do nothing. Fear, in my experience, with moments of terror, it paralyzes you. There's a paralysis that comes upon you when fear happens. And so we cry out to God in our moment, like June's testimony, the fear of an operation, the fear of our heart not working properly, the fear that she could die, all of those things that come. And actually, the danger in a moment of fear, when we cry out to God and he doesn't quite answer us the way we want him to answer us, is we do nothing. We just hold steady. We don't move. Okay, I'm not budging. And fear holds us to the spot. And that can be a dangerous moment because that's not an option for Jesus. Jesus can't do that. Jesus can't go, well, okay, the Father hasn't spoken, so I'll do nothing. He's got to do something here in the context of this moment. Secondly, when the Father is silent, doubt can arise. Even the people like us who love Jesus, Spirit-filled, doubt can arise. And our natural conclusion, often when the Father is silent, is something is wrong. In Gethsemane, nothing was wrong. Everything was right. And because of the way we are, maybe because of our insecurities, maybe because of our worries and our fears, maybe because we've been taught that God blesses good and God punishes bad, maybe that Jobology hangs around our world a little bit. When the Father's silent and he's not quite doing what we want him to do, we just assume, I must be doing something wrong. Can I just say, you could be in a moment of silence and be doing everything right? Come on now. Jesus is in the center of the will of God. He couldn't be any more in the center. He's absolutely locked and loaded. And yet, nothing. Silence. When silence happens, a natural reaction is panic. So this is the opposite of fear, in the sense that the reaction. So fear paralyzes me. Panic, I just do something. Just do something. Make something happen. God's not speaking. Let's just do something. And actually we have example after example in the Bible of people panicking when God was silent in that moment, and in their panic they ended up signing up for something they weren't meant to sign up for. They ended up doing something they weren't meant to do. And it's a really easy thing to do. It doesn't make us bad, it makes us human. It's a natural reaction. Many times as humans we panic. Do something. Do something. And actually there are moments when actually we've got to have the courage to hold steady and not panic. Especially when we believe we're in the will of the Lord. Of course, the devil wants to tell us the silence means you're alone. He's left you. Where is God now? Where is God in your cancer? Where is God in your unemployment? Where is God when your children have gone off the rails? Where is God in your suffering? Where is God when it's not working out? And this is one of the main things the enemy wants to drive into our world. He wants that, because it's this stuff that gets our seed. He wants to drive this idea. God's left you. The reason you're not hearing anything is he's gone. He's left you and he's abandoned you. And so God himself says to us, I will never abandon the works of my hands. And in the moments of silence, that's what we've got to believe. Whatever it looks like, whatever it feels like, whatever the enemy is whispering into me, the one thing I know is not true, that he has left me. His silence does not mean he's gone. His silence just mean he's watching. He's listening. The Father was with Jesus in the garden. Just wasn't speaking. Not speaking doesn't mean he's not there. It takes enormous act of faith to believe in the silence. Come on now. Anybody can believe in the noise. Believing in the silence. When the lights have gone out, when we've all gone home, when we're back to our tents or back to our world or back to normality, and there's silence. Silence. To still believe he is with me. To still believe he has not abandoned me. To still believe he has a plan for me. To still believe no matter what the doctors say, no matter how it works out, no matter where it's going, no matter where I've been, he has not abandoned me. That's oil at that moment. That's when oil comes out. When you and I can believe that he is with us, even though all the signs seem to say that he's left the building, oil comes out. That's oil coming out right there. And actually, that's the challenge to us. What do we do when the Father doesn't speak, when the Father is silent? Here's my word of advice to you. Do the last thing he asked you to do. Stick with the plan. Come on. If his word brought you into the press, he hasn't suddenly left. Stick with the plan. What was the last thing he said? What was the last promise he gave you? What was the last directive he gave you? What is the word of the Lord that burned in you before you got in this olive press? What has he said? Hold on to that. Go back to that. Because his word will not fail. His word does not fall. His mind does not change. He set a plan for you. He's got a plan for you. He wants to do it for you. But sometimes in the silence we panic. He's gone. He's left. silence, we must trust what he said. Not what he said in the silence. He's not saying anything. So if he's not saying anything in the silence, we go back to the last thing he said. What's the last thing he said? Trust it. I'm holding on to words that God gave me when I was 15 years of age. I'm not going to tell you what those promises are. They're promises that are in my journey. And yet there are moments when I've been in the press, I've cried out to God, and nothing's happening. So here's what I do. I go back to those moments. I go back to those markers. I go back to those words. And I say, that's the word of the Lord. As far as I'm aware, that hasn't changed. He hasn't, undone that word. So that word still applies, even though I'm in a moment where he's not speaking. Come on. You with me? Paul, in his own press moment, when speaking to the Corinthian church, says, genuine, yet regarded as impostors, known yet regarded as unknown. And then he flips the power of the yet over. Look at the first two phrases, the yet is working against him, and then he flips it over to work for him. Dying, and yet we live on. Beaten, and yet not killed. Sorrowful, yet always rejoicing. Having nothing, yet possessing everything. Look what Paul's doing. He's in the press. Look at it. Look at it. He's in the dying, the beaten, the sorrowful, and the having nothing. But he's in that, and he's saying, yet. Even though I'm in this, and it feels like the Father is silent, yet. I'll keep coming back to what he said. I'll keep coming back to what he promised. Some of you will hear the echo of another great statement in the scriptures from the prophet Habakkuk in the words of Paul. And Habakkuk says this, though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines, yet. It looks like God has left us. Yet. In the silence, I will believe. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord, and I will be joyful in God my Savior. So he looks at the vines, they're empty. He looks at the crops, they're empty. He looks at the so-called measures of prosperity that are signs of God's presence with the children of Israel, and all of those signs are that actually nothing's happening. And yet he comes back to the reality of the word of the Lord. Yet I know something. I knew something before we went into this press, and I still know it, even though this press is really hurting me. I'm determined to believe that the God who promised me something before the press will fulfill his promise through the press. Amen? And that's exactly what Jesus does. Look at this very, very carefully. Hear these words now in the moment of silence. Now listen. Hear the words I'm about to put on the screen in the context of silence. He's spoken 3 times. He's prayed 3 times, and the Father has remained silent. So how does Jesus respond? Not as I will, but as you will. Now let me say this to you. Jesus knew the will of the Father before he got in the garden. He's not getting in the garden going, what am I doing here? Now what do I do? Wouldn't it be great to know the purpose of God for my life at this moment? No. Jesus went into that garden knowing the purpose of his life, knowing for which he was born, knowing the call that was upon his life. He already knew he had to drink the cup. And so in the silence, when the Father didn't speak, Jesus goes back to what he actually knows. Not what I want, not my will, but your will be done. Powerful idea. Can I say this? I don't wish to be in any way patronizing, so forgive me. That's growed up Christianity. That's big boy, big girl Christianity. One of the most, now, please don't be offended by me. Just let me finish. One of the most offensive things we can say to the Lord in a moment of prayer is, you've left me. That is a deeply offensive thing to say to the Lord. Now you might feel like it. But that's the enemy grabbing your seed. He will not abandon you. He will not abandon you. He is with you. He is for you. And here's Jesus in the silence, having the courage to go back to what he knows. Going back to what you know is the key to getting you through where you are. Come on now. If there's no marvelous moment of revelation in the press, going back to what you know is the key to getting you through where you are. Right now. Come on now. You with me? Look at this. I'm almost finished. A couple more minutes. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author of Hebrews says. The author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Now, here's the next wee verse. It says this. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men so that we will not grow weary. Now, stay with me. We're almost there. Hold it now. June took about 40 minutes, not 4. So just give me a couple more minutes, all right? Stay with me now. And then you can go. I'll let you go and have your lunch. It's worth it. 2 statements stand out in Hebrews 12, verse 2 and verse 3. He endured the cross. And consider him who endured. We don't like that word so much. It doesn't sound very exciting or very attractive. The word used here in the text is absolutely beautiful. It's 2 Greek words jammed together. Hupomeno. Literally, to remain under. Jesus remained under. He remained under the will of God, even though he was in a moment of profound pressure. And when Jesus said to the Father in the garden, not my will but yours be done, he was remaining under. Everything as a human wanted to get him out of there. Everything as a human wanted to create an escape route, an exit. And why not? No one wants to be crushed by a stone that's pressing for the oil. No one wants that. But Jesus makes a moment, a decision of faith to remain under, to endure the moment, to go through the press, to go through the garden. He deliberately refuses to escape. And in that moment, something glorious is released out of him. An oil of submission. An oil where he says to the Father, I don't actually want this. But because I love you, because I'm committed to you, because you are the supreme in my life, because this is the purpose for which I was called, I make a decision to remain under this pressure, under this press, under this cross, under this purpose, so that oil will flow. And lives will be changed. That, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the greatest decisions of faith. Everything within us as humans, get to the exit. The exits are here, 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 and here. Everybody out. That's what the devil wants. He wants you to run. And if you run, then the danger is we keep running. But there are moments when faith says, stay. Remain under. Remain under. Have the courage to believe that even though you're being pressed, the Father is with you. He will not abandon the work of the world. He will not allow you to be crushed. He will not allow you to be tempted above your ability to bear that temptation. He will not allow it. So whatever you're going through, whatever you're in, when you're in the center of the will and the purpose of God, he is with you in it. He may be silent. You may not feel him, but he's there. And when you and I, in those moments, make a decision, Father, I will remain under this, oil flows. Something comes out of you that is glorious, magnificent, other. It's not about you at that moment. It's not about the circumstance at that moment. Something of the divine and something of the glory of God flooding into your situation and oil is coming out that actually is not just the oil of John Andrews, it's the oil of God's glory that is coming out of our moment of pressing. And the world gets touched by that oil. And the world sees a response to the pressing and a response to the pressure, and it can't work it out. And it thinks we're bonkers. And so Jesus, in a moment of glory, looked beyond the cup to the face of the Father. Had Jesus kept his eyes on the cup, he probably wouldn't have drunk it, but he looks beyond the cup. And he looks at the Father and he says, Father, whatever you want, I'll drink it. There are moments when he'll ask us to drink things we don't want to drink. But when you have courage, faith, to drink it, something that's bigger than you. Something happens that's bigger than the moment you're in. Something is released to the world around you that would not have been released. But to run to the other and believe the lie that the silence of men God love. Let me close with this idea and we're going to pray. So wish to him, and the cup will always taste it. And ladies and gentlemen, there are some of you right now, you're in the will of God. You're a good person. You love Jesus. You're tithing. You're giving. You're gifted. And yet, being pressed, it's hard, it's difficult, and in your darkest moments, you can think of yourself. God has left you. He has not left you. He will not leave you. And in the silence, if you will cry out in faith, you say, Lord, I don't understand this. I don't get it. But I trust you. The oil of submission flows. Something of the glory of God is released in us in faith that is greater than anything we are in at that moment. Not my way. Yes. What word? I don't want to drink it. But for you, that, ladies and gentlemen, is overcoming all. That is glory in a moment of victory. That is magnificent in moments of pain. When we are prepared to say, your way over me. Why don't we just pray for a moment? I'm conscious the time is gone. I won't hold you much longer. I know you've got to do lunch. Lots of things. But I want to pray. I have faith in my heart to pray this morning for people who, in the midst of their own suffering, have just felt like the Lord has abandoned them. I'm looking down at all these people laughing and joking and having a great time. But when the lights go off, it feels like I'm on my own. And that's true. Maybe this is the only reason you turned up to hear one sentence of one sermon to tell you you are not alone. Your silence does not mean you are abandoned. He will never abandon the work of his hand. He bought you, he made you, he loves you, he will not abandon you. Now for those in this room, really quickly, I'm just only going to take 2 minutes. Those in this room, and you have felt, John, I have felt abandoned. I have felt alone. I have felt as if the Lord has been silent, and I have interpreted that silence as abandonment. And I want to pray a prayer of faith over you and in you that will encourage you that you are in exactly the same place as Jesus was. He knelt in a garden on the front of the will of God and yet heard nothing. And I want to remind you in the silence to do the last thing he told you to do. And if you will have the courage to do that, all will flow. All will flow. And his glory will come. Now listen, if that's you, and I'm conscious this is all to bed, I will pray. This can be embarrassing for people, but I have faith in my heart to pray for you. If you have felt like I've just described, alone and abandoned because the Father has been silent, stand quickly to your feet right now. Let me pray for you. I'm just going to open this appeal for about 10, 15 seconds, because you know who you are. You'll know who you are. Just a couple more seconds and I'm going to pray. I'm looking around the room at people standing. Now listen, this is a really good moment. This is a life-changing. And you need, for those that are standing, thank you for your humility and your courage and faith to stand. Thank you for your courage. But the word of the Lord to you is the silence does not mean you are alone. The enemy wants to steal your seed. And if he can steal your seed, he will destroy you. But the Lord wants your oil. The Lord wants you to trust him, even in the silence. And if you will, oil will flow. Lord, for those that are standing right now, I pray that a revelation of your word and of your grace will come to every one of them. That a fresh revelation and conviction and confidence that they are not alone will be a word from the Lord to them. Their names are inscribed on the palm of your hand. They are the apple of your eye. They are your masterpiece. They are your workmanship. Lord Jesus, you died on the cross for every single one of them. And your word declares you will never abandon the work of your hands. We rebuke the liar. We rebuke filthy lies that come to us in the moment of depression that tell us God has gone. The Father has abandoned you. He doesn't love you. He's not committed to you. We come against the lies that would steal our faith. We come against lies that would break our hearts. We come against lies that would destroy the children of God. And in its place, we speak the truth of the Word of God. The Lord will never leave you, and he will never abandon you. The Lord will not abandon the work of your hands. The Lord they will receive blessing, that they will receive encouragement, that they will go back to their world knowing, even in the midst of the moment they are in, that you are with them. And so that I pray your blessing on them. See this word. Don't let anybody snatch this word away. Don't let any lie or cynical nonsense that they hear today from anybody snatch this away. In the name of Jesus, we speak protection over the word of the Lord, that it will bring life and freedom to every single one of these wonderful people. In Jesus' name. Why don't we all stand? Let me pray a blessing over you. May we be a people who praise him in the silence. May our mouths be filled with worship and praise of him. May the word of the Lord live and reside in all of our hearts. And may the blessing only serve to produce oil and not take our food. Lord, I pray your blessing on every person in this room. May the Lord God Almighty bless you. And may he keep you. May he turn his face towards you and be gracious to you. May he make his face shine upon you and give you his